Yeah, I was trying another spot. Sounds good.
All right, back for another episode of the Equity Accelerator podcast, coming to you from my pandemic bunker in Southeast Portland. This is James Adair from the PDX Home Loan team, and I always try to bring information to my clients and my business partners and anybody who wants to pay attention about. Usually this podcast is about accelerating your equity financially or in business. But we've done some other things in the past around parenting, and I think we're going to have a really cool conversation today. I'm really excited to be joined by an old friend of mine, Patrick Chapman. He's a naturopathic doctor and has been for close to 17 years, he just told me. So he's one of the top naturopaths in the state of Oregon and has a ton of experience. And since we're all sheltering in place and thinking about our health, in conversations we've had offline, he's been doing a ton of research about the nature of this pandemic, a lot of the science around it. And I'm hoping to have a quick conversation with him to talk about, our health and how we can do our best to avoid getting sick. And if we do get some version of COVID-19, like what can we do? What are the testing options, et cetera? So with that, Patrick, thank you for being here. And let me just kick it off by saying, I'm sure your phone's ringing off the hook. What are you telling people when they're calling and concerned about the pandemic situation?
Yeah, well, thank you, James. And I appreciate your friendship and you reaching out. And it's an interesting time we're all living in. And I think your world and mine are colliding at a unique sort of culmination, if you will, where the virus pandemic has really affected, obviously, the Oregon economy, if not the worldwide economy. So
100%. Yeah, it's an economic story and it's a health story at the same time. They're totally commingled. I feel like it's actually a health story first, and for the economy to dig out, we need to have good medicine and we need to have a good medical plan first. I think that's the foundation of this whole thing.
Yeah, and so in your question about what am I telling people, and my practice has shifted obviously to teleconferencing and doing medicine like this, where normally I'm face to face. So
right.
We're learning a new ball game ourselves. But also, the overarching message that I'm trying to share with people is that we need to optimize our immune system ourselves. We need to really prioritize our self-care. We need to get creative with our exercise and daily exercise, and optimizing our sleep and our diet. And those are sort of that's like the triad of if and when we come in contact with the virus, and it's more like when, not if, that we need to be well rested. We need to have a healthy gut and microbiome in our bodies, so that there's not such a robust inflammatory response that's going to be so robust that it kills you and leads to bilateral pulmonary edema. And so we're stress is obviously a big piece of this, because it's our world has been turned upside down a bit.
Yeah, I mean, every family is at home learning a whole new rhythm. They're under a lot of stress. People are stressed out already, but now it's like maybe job loss, maybe family dysfunctions that are exacerbated by just being in the same room for 5 weeks straight, or whatever that looks like. And the financial stress, I mean, it's a whole new level of complication.
And due to that, we've reached out and are providing resources for how to manage our stress. Because if you're stressed and you get hit by virus, then we're kind of set up for a perfect storm. And so we have, on our website, Sellwood Family Medicine, we have provided some resources for patients on self-care for my own personal patients, that talk about, breathing exercises that help reduce stress, links to online virtual yoga classes.
Oh man, that stuff is getting really sophisticated. I'm blown away at how happy I am with my local boot camp gym, Fit Body Boot Camp. Little plug for them.
Yeah.
They have pivoted to video. They have a daily video that comes out at 4 a.m. I just stream it on my television, and I do a 25-minute, burpees and jumping jacks, and I'm sweaty and I feel great. I feel like I'm able to maintain my fitness rhythm just in my basement, in the pandemic basement. I'm doing it all here.
Yeah, and with optimizing our exercise, then we're also gonna get a less inflammatory response. And so the stress and exercise and sleep are like the key things again. And with that, I put in, a plug for good, healthy eating. So we all have a little bit more time at home.
We're all cooking every meal.
Perhaps, it's, some people are probably getting food delivered still, but I think with that home cooking, you're going to get a better nutritional punch, if you will. And there are foods, especially high vegetable, kind of plant-based foods, that are really full of things like inulins and polysaccharides and
name some foods. What are like the top 3 COVID-19 beat down foods?
Well, it's hard to put it into a top 3, I would say, but there onions and garlic and leeks and even spices and herbs are very helpful because they provide like prebiotics. So like things like cinnamon and sage and parsley and rosemary and thyme and sort of like all those spices.
The anti-inflammatory in some way.
Yeah. And turmeric, is a one that's touted a lot. And so in that home cooking, use those spices freely, have a lot of vegetables that are sort of the color of the rainbow, if you will, that are really high in nutrients. And, focus on good, healthy eating, minimizing sugars, minimizing alcohol. Pro-inflammatory foods are, sugar, alcohol, red meat, those kinds of things. So you just want to kind of dial that back a bit if you can.
Muriel just made some potato leek soup. It was so easy. I would encourage anyone, and it's really yummy. It's like chicken broth. You chop up potatoes, you kind of boil them down, and then you blend it in with chicken broth and chopped up leeks, and you just put it in a blender, and it turns it into this really
creamy,
and you just put some salt on it and maybe like a little bit of sour cream or something. It's delish.
Yeah, and you could take that one step further and use cauliflower instead of potatoes and get that same creamy, rich flavor.
Okay, good call.
A little more nutritional punch, as potatoes are a vegetable. They're just really starchy vegetable.
Starchy, yeah.
But yeah, that kind of like spending a little more time in the kitchen and cooking and preparing meals with your children and that sort of quality time, so we don't drive each other crazy. But also, I think it's important to not be socially distant, but like physically distant from people. But we need to continue our social interactions with our friends, set up, virtual double dates and such, cycling with our friends or something that can be done with that physical distance, not necessarily social distance.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, that helps with stress. It helps with mental health for sure.
Yeah, and staying connected with each other is important at a time that's a little bit chaotic and sort of unstable. Um, just that routine you said that you start your day with, kind of that structure is good, even for our kids who are doing homeschooling. And
I know. I'm
you
amazed
know
at how difficult it is to get my kids out of their pajamas. They're just like, doesn't matter. I'm in my pajamas all the time. Doesn't matter. I'm like, what if we go outside? They're like, you got me there. You know.
yeah, I'm wearing my pajamas now from the waist down. You just can't.
Hey, we call that a Zoom mullet. I've heard, like your party up top and just pajamas down low.
Yeah, well, I'm noticing like I need to go to the barber, but
Oh my God.
we're gonna get some.
I'm like slicking this thing back. I'm pretty close to having this whole thing just coming behind my ear. That's like, when this thing's over, I'm just gonna be having a sweet helmet of hair.
It's a good look for you.
I'm doing my best. Thank you. But to kind of, one more thing I wanted to bring you in on. I appreciate all of the advice. I mean, it's obviously like you said, the triad of sleep and health, or sleep, physical movement, and diet are the things that we can really control.
Yeah, maybe stress management.
Stress management, yeah, for sure. If you can, that's probably the hardest one. I mean, if you're under stress, you can't just be like, stop being stressed out. I think breathing and meditating. There's like the Headspace app. I've experimented with that. It's really, really helpful. And you can get your kids to meditate. I mean, they're under stress too. So I would definitely explore all of these digital tools.
Yeah, we put together a whole page on parental resources for kids too, that include things like astronauts reading books to children from space, and so they're sort of grabbing the book that's floating, and then they're reading it page by page, and there's like great museum tours where you could tour like the botanical gardens of Hawaii virtually, and the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is nearby where I grew up.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
And all these places have wonderful things to sort of tour the world with, and that kind of fun and other ways that we're actually updating our website regularly about how to do age-appropriate conversation with your children about what's going on, because it's obviously world turned upside down for them, where they're not seeing their friends or going to school. Yeah. So that stress management piece is huge, and then therefore there's a lesser inflammatory response,
so let's talk about if someone does come into contact with the virus. And like you said, it's not if, but when, which is a really wild concept to wrap your head around. I just feel like we're just stuck in our house waiting for this thing to blow over, or waiting for therapies to develop or testing to develop. And it does seem like for us to really start getting back to some version of our old lives, which eventually will happen, we need strong therapeutic options, and we need a lot more testing. We need to know who's got it and who doesn't, who may have already had it and didn't realize it, who's got it and doesn't have symptoms. Like, we need to identify where it is before we can start letting people interact on a more uncontrolled level like we want.
So true.
If someone wanted to get a test in the Portland area, like what would you do? What would you recommend?
It's a little bit of a complicated answer in that, let me start by saying that, this is why the crazy hand washing and soap and water is known to kill the virus. 70% isopropyl alcohol is known to kill the virus off surfaces. That's why it's so important to just wash your hands, wash your face, keep your hands off your face, wash the vegetables even, wear a mask when you're out. Those things are huge, because the the unknown about the testing is that we don't know that, and the from time of exposure to infection is anywhere between 2 to 11 days. In that entire time, people are shedding viral cells.
There's
So,
when you get it and before you have symptoms, there's a pretty big window where you could be spreading it unknowingly.
Yeah, and we used to think that 2 weeks was enough time to kind of quarantine someone. We're now learning that it's more in averaging like 3 weeks, up to 37 days, so that viral shedding can happen for much longer. And so the longer that we're all kind of self-quarantined, almost the better. But, obviously, it just prepares our hospitals and such for what's to come. And Oregon's a little bit ill-prepared in that per capita, we have the fewest hospital beds per capita of the entire nation. We hit number 50 out of 50.
I did not know that.
So we're buying a little time, getting enough personal protective equipment ready, getting, like you said, rolling out mass testing, which is coming. It's not here yet. And there, in regards to testing, there's like a nasopharyngeal swab that's used to test for active virus in the system. And then we've got blood tests, which is what you're referring to as like if someone's been exposed or have they developed immunity. And that's a blood test that's done via IgG, IgM, and
It's
IgM.
like you draw blood and
And the immunoglobulin M shows up first, and then it's followed by IgG, which lasts like 6 weeks. So, and really there isn't an option to get simultaneous nasopharyngeal and blood testing done yet. They're prioritizing tests to people who are sick and to healthcare workers. Sure. And before we open our doors to like part-time, once a day medicine, which I've decided to roll that out Cinco de Mayo, and do procedural stuff face to face, I'm going to have a negative test on record, and I'm going to do the IgG, IgM because I don't have any current symptoms.
Although you're self-testing with the blood test. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And you can be an asymptomatic carrier, so I might likely get the nasopharyngeal swab as well, but we're going to be kind of alien medicine with mask and face shield and a little thing around my hair that needs, a trim. And patients will be masked as well. So we have to slow the viral spread somehow.
Right.
And that's the most difficult part of this. And that's why the extreme measures. And, there are some cool tests. There's some cool treatment coming.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You're paying attention to the science. I'm paying attention to the stocks and the bond market in my mortgage practice. But the stock market like blew up overnight because Gilead Sciences had some really positive news about a therapy that they're developing. I mentioned the name of it to you. I already forgot it. Do you remember what it was called? It starts with an R.
Yeah, it's just kind of looking that up.
It's like here, let me look it up real quick. It's like Risto something.
It's remdesivir.
Remdesivir, that's what it's called.
Yeah, the Desapear, the IVIR on the end is it's an antiviral medication. Mm-hmm. And I just found out about this yesterday.
Yeah, we all did. Basically, the story is the results have been really strong for giving this therapy to people who are really bad off. They're in the ICU, maybe even on a ventilator or something like that. They're giving it to them, and within a couple of days, it's reversing the negative effects of COVID. So that seems very enticing to, the stock market is reacting super strong to the idea that like, if we can have a really good medicine that turns the death rate to close to zero, you know, back to work we go, right? That's what we want.
Yeah, and this does buy a little time to develop it. This one's in early stages, I think. But much like the hydroxychloroquine, which is
right.
a quinine derivative, it inhibits the viral cell replication. And so the virus actually, it has this little, it's kind of a scary looking thing. It has this little spike protein coming off it. You've probably seen Google electron micrograph images of it, but that spike protein kind of hooks to our cell wall, and then it, via the RNA replicase, it starts to duplicate itself.
So it grows exponentially inside your body.
And so it's in one cell, and then it develops and replicates itself, and then that cell bursts, and then we got viral particles everywhere, and then they go and infect other cells. And so if you come in contact with it via eating something, ingesting something with the viral particles on it, that you'll get symptoms like diarrhea and fever. Whereas if you inhale the particles via aerosolization or respiration, you get a bronchial lung infection and fever and cough and all that stuff. So there's various presentations of it. There's various symptoms. It can live on surfaces between 3 days. It can live in a mask for 7 days. So the masks are meant to be kind of
disposable.
Not reused so much. So we just need more equipment.
I have this little like Lycra scarf buff thing. And when I go to the grocery store, I just put it on. It's like a little tube that goes around my neck, and I just pull it up over my mouth and nose. I mean, I don't think it keeps anything out, but I guess wearing the mask in public isn't for preventing intake. It's actually for preventing your output.
Well, and I would say it's also really for preventing you touching your own face. And that's when you touch something and then it's on your hands and then you scratch your face. That's what the real benefit of the mask is. If you're
I did the most boneheaded thing yesterday. I was at Safeway picking up a few things, and I had like gloves on, and then I got out and I was like changing the podcast. I was listening to my phone. So what did I do when my glove hand wasn't working? I pulled it out. I put my glove finger in my mouth, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I probably shouldn't have my COVID glove in my dang mouth right now.
Well, hopefully it was sterile at that point. You hadn't touched anything.
It's a slow learning process on how to navigate this new world.
Yeah, and we're all learning a lot about hygiene,
Yeah.
So that's going to be a long-term effect for all of us, probably.
Yeah, hopefully that's positive. Well, so I'm going to wrap this up. This conversation has been super awesome. Thank you for your time and your expertise. If people want to reach out to you and they're in the Portland area and they want to have a naturopathic conversation, how do they reach you?
The simplest way is via the phone. But we have a website at sellwoodfamilymedicine.com, and you can access all the info on there.
That's right. Sellwood Family Medicine. If you're in Portland, they're in the Sellwood neighborhood. They're right on Southeast Tacoma, which is what connects to the Sellwood Bridge. And they have a very, very cool clinic set up there with how many docs do you have on site?
There are 5 of us and 8 employees, and it's a true family medicine, I call it. So
yeah, like what do you guys have any specialties, or what when people, most of your clientele, do they have I know they run the gamut, but what's a good describe someone who would be a good, if they're listening and they're looking for a naturopathic component to their lives, to their health plan, what does that look like?
I have actually clinical expertise in joint pain and joint injections via ultrasound diagnosis and needle guidance, and that's why I kind of need to open the doors again for me, because I got to do it face to face. And another interest in diabetes, but we're all five of us here that are naturopathic docs all do kind of general practice family medicine too, with like a little natural twist.
Okay.
But you know, I just encourage everyone who follows your podcast or stuff, James, is that they reach out to their personal healthcare physicians right now, like in this time of, you know, how do we really optimize our immune function? Because I can't really get into it in that much depth in just a quick conversation. But I would encourage everyone to kind of do a teleconferencing visit with their own personal family physician to get some ideas and reach out in a time of need, because we all have a little time. You might as well schedule with your doctor. And, you know, I do the same. So
yeah, good point. Good point. Well, excellent. Thank you. So again, if you're listening, check out Selwood Family Medicine. There's tons of great digital resources there, even if you're somewhere else in the world or in the country. Check out that website, learn more about Patrick and his practice, and stay well, man. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it. And thank you for all your hard work in this busy time for you as well, Jim.
All right. Yeah, my pleasure, man. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Boom.